Hey guys, this is Graham with TutorialClarity, and I'm proud to announce my new and long series of Adobe After Effects tutorials. So here's the first effect that we're going to be making in this series of lessons. Pretty cool. So, I'm going to be using two different plugins of which I highly recommend that you get your hands on. These two plugins are Trapcode Form and CC Smear. With that, let's get down to business. Alright, so what we're going to do, I'm just going to delete my previous project stuff here so you don't get confused with anything. And we're going to go to Composition, New Composition. And I have my width. Here's my settings. I would suggest just following along with them. 1280 by 720. We're going to lock the aspect ratio. Make sure that is checked. Pixel aspect ratio is going to be square pixels. Frame rate 29.97 frames per second. Resolution set to full. And the duration 15 seconds. So we're going to call this tutorial. And we're going to hit OK. Alright, now we're going to create some of our layers. The first layer we're going to create is our particle layer. We're going to go to Layer, New, Layer, New, Solid. And we'll call this Particles. Make sure that it is the comp size. Just click the button that says Make Comp Size. By default, I think it is. So you go ahead and click OK. We're going to create another layer. This is going to be our null object, and I'll show you what we're going to be using this for. And we're going to call this layer down here. If you hit enter on your keyboard when the layer is selected, you can rename it pretty quickly. We'll just call this null. Now we're going to create the camera, because what we're going to be doing, sorry, my hand's a little bit jittery. Select the camera, and we're going to name this camera layer camera, and we're going to set the preset to 35 millimeters. And you can enable depth of field if you like. Go ahead and click OK. Go ahead and click OK. And what we're going to do is we're going to parent our camera to the null object. But first, we need to make the null object a 3D null object. And to do that, you can bring up the 3D amongst other options, such as motion blur, by hitting F4 on your keyboard, and you'll see that toggles it back and forth. Make sure it looks like this, and we're going to select this box, which says yes, null object is going to be a 3D layer. We're going to drag the camera object below the null just for better understanding, and we're going to parent it to the null. That means that wherever the positioning and rotation and just general positioning is, this camera is going to be parented to it. So it's going to be set to observe wherever the null object is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, what do we need to do next? Let's go ahead and import our audio. And I'll tell you why we're going to import audio. Go to Import File. I have a Bach cello suite up here, and we can drag that onto our timeline. And what we're going to do is we're going to convert the audio to keyframes. Now you ask, why are we converting the audio to keyframes? Well, here's why. Excuse me. The reason we're converting the audio to keyframes is because we actually need the levels of this audio file. You can see here, here's all the levels. We need to convert them to keyframe values so that we can use that in our animations and various effects, of which are near unlimited in After Effects. We can use that to adjust our values in those effects based upon the levels of the music or sound or whatever have you. In this case, it's just going to be a song. One thing I need to note is that After Effects seems to have problems with MP3 files. So I tend to convert them to waves. It's a very simple thing. You can download freeware on the internet to do that for you. I use FL Studio to convert it. It's relatively quick and high quality, and After Effects loves wave files, so I converted this MP3 to wave. And to convert it to audible keyframes or audio keyframes, we're going to go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and convert audio to keyframes. Now we're going to call this audio levels. And you can see here, if we just pull this down and go into effects, that it created keyframes for the left, right, and both channel values. We're just going to delete the left and right channels. It's not needed because the both channels does take care of that. And if you'll see, if I come in here, it is already keyed for all the values in terms of audio levels. I hope that makes sense. You can see that the value changes. It starts out where the song is quiet, and then the cello comes in, and you can see the values changing according to the levels of the music. I can't even express to you how useful this is for your animations, if you want them to be in sync with audio. And there are many tips and tricks that I'm going to show you on that in the future. Let's just pull this back up, and we'll move on with the rest of the tutorial. Pull this up. Next thing we're going to do is create our text layer. First thing I'm going to do is hide my audio levels and null objects, because they really are both null objects. Now I'm going to create my text layer. Grab the text tool. We'll just click in here, and I'll call it TutorialClarity. And I'm going to change the color of tutorial, because I'm picky like that. And I have the value set to 24 pixels. Now what if you want it in the center of the document, which I do. I always want things to be centered in regards to this. I'm going to go to Title, Action Safe, and I can hold down Control and left click with my layer, my text layer selected. I'm going to drag it right in the center, and that seems to be near perfect. So I'm going to go back and turn that Tile Action Safe off, and we're pretty much good to go with that. Alright, what do we need to do next? I think it's time to move on with our particle layer. In fact, to be honest with you, let's go ahead and take care of the effects on our TutorialClarity layer, or in your case, whatever text you want. Really, these effects come with Adobe After Effects. The only one that doesn't is the one I mentioned at the beginning, CC Smear, and for the particles, Trapcode Form. So I'm going to go to Effect, and the first thing we're going to do is go to Distort, and we're going to scroll down and find CC Smear. There it is. And then we're going to apply a glow effect. Go to Effect, Stylize Glow. That one comes with After Effects, and that just adds a glow to it. I'm going to pull it up over here because I don't really need to do anything particular with it. I just like the glow, and it automatically the glow automatically goes over that layer based upon that layer's colors. So we're going to set the reach here, and we're going to set it to about 160, and we're going to set this to 75. Now here's the important thing. You'll notice in my animation, according to my audio levels, it randomly jumps in different directions. It randomly stretches or smears in different directions. Now what I do to achieve that is, by default, I set my to value, and I copy my from value to my to value. It's worded a little strange. Control V to paste that, Control C, Control V, and now they are both the same, and thus, since the to and from are exactly the same, there is no stretched value. It's just normal. It's normal. Alright, with that, I think we're good. We've applied our basic effects to that. We're going to come back and add the expressions towards the end of the tutorial. Let's move on with our particles. If you hit Control Y on your keyboard, you can, that's the hotkey for creating a new solid layer. We'll call this particle. Particles, we'll make that plural. And make comp size as always, hit OK. Now we're going to apply our Trapcode Form effect, Trapcode Form. Alright, now this is the big part, and I'm going to be making a lot of changes in here, so try to follow along. If you need to, pause, rewind, etc., etc. First thing we're going to be modifying is the base form, and we're going to set the size X to 2000, size Y to 2000, size Z to 2000, and our particles in the X-axis, we're going to have 175, and we're going to make them equal. We want them to be equivalent. Along the Y-axis is 2. And since by default this plugin creates 3 different planes of particles, we're only going to have 1 in this tutorial. So we're going to set the particles in Z to 1. And believe it or not, we are done with that one. And we're going to move on now to the particle